Ethan Cole didn't usually stop for strangers. His world was built on precision, meetings, investments, perfectly timed decisions. But that night, as lightning flashed above the wet skyline, something inside him stirred. He couldn't drive away. He ran toward the fallen goal, rain drenching his immaculate suit. Her pulse was faint, her skin cold as porcelain. "Hey, can you hear me?" he asked, voice trembling more than he wanted to admit. No answer, just shallow breathing, a strand of soaked hair clinging to her lips. He lifted her carefully, surprised by how light she felt, like she hadn't eaten in days. The scent of rain mixed with something faintly sweet, like old perfume and forgotten memories. He carried her to his car, laid her gently across the back seat, and turned up the heater. His driver stared in confusion, but Ethan only said, "Hospital. Now." As they sped through the rain, Ethan kept glancing at her reflection in the rearview mirror. Her face was bruised, yet striking, fragile but oddly familiar. Something tugged at his memory, a whisper he couldn't place. At the emergency room, he stayed until the doctor returned. "She's stable now," the doctor said. "Severe exhaustion and dehydration. She must have been out there a long time." Ethan nodded. "Can I see her?" When he entered her room, she was still unconscious. He stood silently, hands in his pockets, watching the rhythmic rise and fall of her chest. The rain outside softened into a whisper, and for a moment, the billionaire who had everything felt the strange ache of someone who'd lost something long ago. A nurse came in quietly. "Sir, we found this in her pocket." She handed him a small locket, tarnished and heartbroken. He opened it. Inside was a faded picture of a little girl holding hands with another child near an old orphanage sign. Ethan froze. He knew that place. He had been there once, a lifetime ago. He sank into the chair beside her bed, staring at the picture until his vision blurred. "It can't be," he whispered. When she stirred slightly, murmuring in her sleep, he leaned closer. Her voice, soft, fragile, breathed out a single word. "Eli." That name. No one had called him that in 20 years. Only one person had. His heartbeat quickened. Could it really be her? The girl who used to share her bread with him when he had nothing? The same one who promised they'd find each other again someday? He clenched the locket in his hand. The weight of it burned like truth. For the first time in years, Ethan didn't feel powerful. He felt human. He whispered to her, though she couldn't hear, "Lily, if it's really you." Outside, thunder rolled softly, like the sky remembering too. The rain had stopped by morning, leaving the hospital windows fogged with dew. Ethan sat in the same chair, eyes red but steady, the locket still in his palm. Lily hadn't woken yet, though color had returned to her cheeks. He didn't know why he hadn't left. Billionaires didn't sit by strangers' bedsides. Yet something about her presence anchored him, the way her small hand rested over the blanket, as if clinging to something unseen. When the nurse entered to change her for, she smiled faintly. "You've been here all night, sir. She's lucky someone found her." Ethan nodded, his throat tightening. "Yeah," he said softly. "Maybe I'm the lucky one." Hours passed before Lily's eyelashes fluttered open. The first thing she saw was a soft light above her, then a tall man beside the bed. She tried to sit up, groaning weakly. Ethan leaned forward. "Careful. You fainted in the rain. You're safe now." Her lips parted, voice hoarse. "You helped me." He nodded. "Yeah. You collapsed outside the main road." She blinked, dazed. "Why would someone like you stop for me?" Ethan smiled faintly. "I don't know. Maybe because once someone stopped for me." She looked away, the faintest tremor running through her hands. There was something about his tone, something painfully familiar. "What's your name?" she asked. "Ethan Cole." Her breath hitched. The name echoed in her memory, faint but alive, like a melody she'd known in another life. He caught the look in her eyes. "Do we know each other?" She hesitated, eyes darting to the window. "No," she whispered. "I don't think so." But the lie trembled between them. Ethan placed the locket on her bedside table. "This was in your pocket." Her gaze fell upon it, and she froze. The moment she opened it, tears filled her eyes. The faded photo stayed back, 2 children, muddy and smiling. She lifted her hand to her mouth. "Where did you?" "It's yours," he said gently. I recognize it." Her shoulders shook. "You were the boy from the orphanage." Ethan nodded slowly. "Eli," he said softly. "That's what you used to call me." The air in the room thickened with silence. Lily covered her face, sobbing quietly. "I thought you died. I searched for you for years." Ethan looked away, blinking back his own tears. "I thought you were adopted. They told me you left. I ran away a week later, thinking maybe I could find you." Their stories had diverged in tragedy, only to meet again under storm and ruin. After a long pause, Lily whispered, "You shouldn't have helped me. I'm not someone you'd want to know anymore." "What does that mean?" Ethan asked. But before she could answer, the doctor entered, breaking the moment. "She needs rest," he said. "No stress." Ethan nodded reluctantly. "I'll come back later." Outside, he leaned against the corridor wall, hands trembling. Everything he'd built, his empire, his wealth, his silence, now felt small compared to the ache in his chest. He remembered the promise they made as kids. If life separates us, we'll find each other again, even if it takes forever. Forever had arrived, and it was soaked in rain and heartbreak. That evening, the hospital was quiet except for the soft hum of machines and the scent of disinfectant that clung to every corner. Ethan returned, a small bag of food in his hand. He paused at the doorway, watching Lily stare out the window at the pale moon. Her face was thinner now that he could really see it, tired eyes, cracked lips, and yet a beauty that had weathered pain rather than time. He cleared his throat softly. "You should eat something." She turned, startled, then smiled faintly. "You came back." "I said I would." He set the bag on the tray. "Hospital food's terrible." Lily gave a soft laugh, one that barely reached her eyes. "You still remember things like that." "Some things never leave," he said, sitting beside her. "But I'd rather hear about you. What happened after they took you?" Her fingers tightened around the blanket. For a moment, she didn't answer. Then, slowly, her voice came, quiet, raw. "I was adopted by a couple who lived on the outskirts of the city. They were kind at first, but when my father lost his job, things changed. They started treating me like an extra mouth to feed. I left when I turned 18. Ethan's jaw tensed. "And since then," she smiled without warmth. "Jobs, mostly. Whatever kept the lights on. Sometimes they didn't stay on. Life's funny that way. It teaches you how little people notice when you're fading." Her words pierced him more than he wanted to admit. He thought of his penthouse overlooking the skyline, his 1,000 suits, his endless meetings, and how none of it had filled the quiet ache he'd buried. He looked at her again. "You don't have to fade anymore, Lily. Let me help you." She shook her head. "You don't owe me anything, Ethan. You've already done enough." "It's not about owing," he said firmly. "It's about righting something that was wrong for too long." For a moment, their eyes met, and the silence between them said everything words couldn't. But Lily turned away, afraid of the kindness she saw in him, because it hurt too much to hope again. The next day, Ethan had her moved to a private suite, against her protests. He paid her bills without saying a word, left flowers by her bedside, and returned every night just to sit and listen. Days turned into weeks. She was healing, though something deeper remained broken, the kind of wound time couldn't touch. One night, after the nurses left, she spoke quietly. "Do you ever wish you hadn't left the orphanage?" Ethan sighed, staring at his hands. "Every day. But if I hadn't, I wouldn't have built what I have now." "And does what you built make you happy?" she asked. He paused, thinking. "It used to make me proud. Now, I'm not sure I even know what happiness feels like." Her lips curved sadly. "Maybe happiness isn't something you build. Maybe it's someone you remember." Her words lingered long after the conversation ended. That night, as he walked through the empty hospital corridor, Ethan realized she was right. Everything he had, the money, the company, the fame, was noise. She was the only thing that had ever been real. He made a quiet promise then, as the elevator doors closed. He wouldn't lose her again. Lily was discharged 2 days later. Ethan insisted on driving her home. The home turned out to be a small, worn-down apartment in an old neighborhood where the streetlights flickered like fading stars. The walls were chipped, the air faintly damp, and the bed was just a thin mattress pushed against a corner. She smiled shyly, embarrassed. "It's not much," she said, avoiding his gaze. Ethan looked around quietly. "It's honest," he replied. "That's more than I can say for half the penthouses in the city." She laughed softly. "Still, I didn't imagine you'd ever step into a place like this." He shrugged, a rare warmth in his tone. "I've stepped into boardrooms colder than this." She looked at him for a long moment, unsure whether to believe his kindness or fear it. "Why are you doing this, Ethan? You don't even know the person I've become." He stepped closer, his voice low but steady. "Maybe not, but I know the girl who gave away her last slice of bread to a hungry boy, and I don't believe she ever really disappeared." Her eyes glistened. "That girl was foolish," she whispered. "Maybe," he said, "but she taught me what kindness means, and I've been chasing that lesson ever since." For the first time in years, she let herself smile, a fragile, trembling smile that looked like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. As the days passed, Ethan visited often. Sometimes he brought food, sometimes he brought silence. They talked about small things, books, music, childhood memories. But behind every conversation was a deeper tension neither dared to name. One evening, as rain began to fall again, Lily stood at her window watching the droplets race down the glass. "It always rains when I remember the past," she murmured. Ethan joined her, his reflection beside Hayes in the dim light. "Maybe it's not the past," he said softly. "Maybe it's life's way of washing away what still hurts." She turned to him. "You really believe that?" He nodded. "I want to." There was a long pause. Then, quietly, she said, "Ethan, there's something I need to tell you." His expression shifted. "What is it?" Her hands trembled as she clasped them together. "The reason I collapsed that night, it wasn't just hunger or exhaustion. I was running." "Running?" he echoed. Tears welled in her eyes. "From people I owed money to. I made a mistake, a desperate one. I borrowed to pay for my mother's treatment. She passed anyway, and I couldn't pay them back." Ethan's chest tightened. "Lily, I didn't want you to find me like that," she whispered. "Broken, ashamed. I'm not the same girl you remember." He stepped closer, gently lifting her chin so their eyes met. "Maybe not, but she's still in there. I can see her." A single tear slipped down her cheek. "You shouldn't get involved in this, Ethan. They'll come for me. Then they'll have to go through me first." Her breath hitched. "You don't mean that." He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hid fear behind conviction. "I've faced boardrooms full of sharks. Lily, these people don't scare me." The wind howled outside, rattling the old window pane. Inside, silence fell again, but this time it felt different. It felt like trust. That night, sleep refused to come to either of them. Lily sat by the window long after Ethan left, watching the streetlights blur in the drizzle. Her heart felt heavy, not from fear, but from a way hope and guilt tangled inside her. She had prayed for peace, not protection from a man she once loved like family. And now he was back, threatening to fight battles that weren't his to fight. Meanwhile, Ethan sat in his car across the street, engine off, rain streaking the windshield. He couldn't leave. Every instinct told him to stay close, not as a billionaire, not as a savior, but as a boy who once promised he'd never let her suffer again. The next morning, he made calls, quiet ones. Within hours, his legal team traced the debts, the people behind them, and the dark corners where her name had been passed around like a note of despair. It wasn't just money. It was blackmail. A man named Victor Crane, a local loan shark with connections that reached far beyond the neighborhood. Ethan felt anger stir, sharp and cold. He wasn't used to feeling helpless, but this wasn't business. This was personal. That evening, he knocked on Lily's door again. She looked startled, holding a cup of tea that trembled in her hands. "You came again." "I told you I wouldn't let anyone hurt you," he said, "and I meant it." "Ethan, please," she whispered. I can handle it. He shook his head. You shouldn't have to. The silence stretched until her voice cracked. Why do you care so much? He hesitated, then said quietly, because you were the first person who ever cared for me when I had nothing. You gave me warmth when the world didn't. And maybe I've been waiting all these years for a chance to return it. Her eyes filled. Ethan. But before she could answer, a loud knock thundered against the door. Lily froze. The color drained from her face. He turned sharply. Who is it? She didn't speak, just shook her head, trembling. The knock came again, louder this time. Lily, we know you're in there. Ethan's jaw set. He motioned for her to stay back and opened the door. Two men stood outside, rain dripping from their coats, faces hard and expectant. One sneered. You must be the new friend. Ethan's tone was calm but edged with steel. If you're here for money, you'll get it. But you'll deal with me now, not her. The taller one stepped forward. Who are you supposed to be? Ethan smiled faintly, without warmth. Someone who can end your little business if I make a few calls. The men exchanged a look. Then, without another word, they turned and walked away into the rain. Lily collapsed onto the couch, shaking. Ethan, what did you just do? I handled it, he said simply. You can't just fix everything with money, she said, her voice breaking. He looked at her, his expression softening. Then tell me how to fix it without it. Her eyes glistened, and she whispered, You can't. You can only stay. Something inside him broke open at those words, something old, tender, and painfully human. He sat beside her, and for a long moment, neither spoke. Outside, the storm had quieted, leaving only the gentle sound of dripping water. The days that followed felt strangely quiet. The tension that had once filled Lily's apartment was replaced by a fragile calm, the kind that comes after a storm but before the next one gathers. Ethan started visiting daily, sometimes bringing groceries, sometimes just stories. He never mentioned the men again, though the memory of their knock still echoed in Lily's chest. One morning, she made coffee before he arrived. It was a small gesture, but to her, it meant everything. The first time she'd chosen to give instead of receive since their reunion. When he entered, sunlight pooled across the floor, catching the dust in golden swirls. You're early, he said, smiling. You're always on time, she replied, handing him a cup. I thought I'd try to beat you for once. He took it, their fingers brushing briefly. The warmth startled them both. They sat together, the city stretching wide outside her window. Ethan spoke of his childhood after the orphanage, how he had built his company from a small tech startup, how money had come, but meaning hadn't. Lily listened silently, her heart aching for the boy who had once drawn stars in the dirt with a broken stick, and said he'd touch them someday. When he finished, she looked at him quietly. You did touch them, Ethan. You built an empire. He smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. Stars look beautiful from far away, Lily, but up close, they burn. She understood what he meant. Success hadn't healed him. It had only given his loneliness a bigger house to live in. That night, as Ethan was about to leave, Lily stopped him. Wait, she said softly. You said those men wouldn't come back. How can you be sure? He hesitated, then admitted, because I bought out the company Victor was using as a front. He won't bother you again. Her eyes widened. You did what? I told you, he said calmly. I can handle it. She stared at him, torn between gratitude and anger. Ethan, you can't fix everything with power. He looked down. It's the only language I've ever known. The pain in his voice cut through her. She stepped closer, gently placing her hand over his. Then maybe it's time you learn a new one. For a moment, their world fell silent. No city, no rain, just two people breathing the same fragile air. And in that stillness, something unspoken bloomed. Forgiveness, perhaps, or the first glimpse of love that had been waiting all along. But fate wasn't finished testing them. The next evening, as Ethan was leaving her building, a dark sedan pulled up. The passenger window rolled down. A man's voice called out, low and cold. Cole, you made enemies when you interfered. Ethan stopped, his pulse steady but sharp. if this is about Lily. It's always about her, the man interrupted. You should have stayed in your tower. The car sped away before he could answer, leaving the echo of tires slicing through puddles. Ethan stood under the flickering streetlight, jaw clenched. The rain began again, slow and deliberate, as if warning him that peace never lasts long for those who challenge pain. He didn't tell Lily that night. He couldn't. Not yet. Instead, he promised himself he'd protect her, no matter what it cost. Ethan barely slept that night. The threat echoed in his mind, a shadow that refused to fade. He sat by his office window at dawn, watching the city wake, glass towers catching the first light, streets filling with motion, life moving as if nothing had changed. But for him, everything had. By the time he returned to Lily's apartment later that morning, the exhaustion on his face betrayed him. She noticed instantly. "You didn't sleep?" she said quietly. He shrugged. "I had things to take care of." She frowned, stepping closer. "You're hiding something, Ethan." He hesitated, torn between protection and truth. "It's nothing for you to worry about." She touched his arm. "Please, don't do that. Don't shut me out again like you used to." Her voice trembled with fear. Fear not of the danger, but of losing the fragile connection they'd just rebuilt. Ethan met her eyes, the weight of unspoken words pressing on his chest. Finally, he exhaled. "Someone followed me last night. They wanted to scare me off, but I won't let them touch you." Lily's hand fell away, her face pale. "Ethan, this isn't just about me anymore. You're putting yourself in danger." He smiled faintly. "Maybe that's the first time I've done something that matters." Her eyes filled. "Don't say that." But he did, because he meant it. For once, he wasn't running toward profit or power. He was running toward purpose. That evening, they cooked dinner together, or rather, tried to. Lily laughed when he couldn't even chop vegetables right. The moment felt light, almost normal, like a fragile dream neither wanted to wake from. When the rain started again, they stood on her small balcony, side by side. The streetlight shimmered on wet pavement, and thunder hummed softly in the distance. "You know," she said, "I used to believe the rain was punishment, a way for the world to remind me I was small." He glanced at her. "And now?" "Now it feels like forgiveness," she whispered. "Like maybe the world isn't trying to drown me anymore." Ethan looked at her, his heart aching in ways money could never soothe. "Lily, there's something you should know, too. That night, when I lifted you from the street, I froze because I recognized you. It wasn't shock. It was relief, like the universe finally kept its promise." Tears slipped down her cheeks, blending with the rain. "After all these years, I thought I'd imagined you. I thought you were just a memory I made to survive." He reached for her hand. "I'm real, and I'm here." For a long moment, they said nothing more, just the rhythm of the rain between them, washing, mending, forgiving. Then, softly, she leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder. "Thank you for finding me again," she murmured. He smiled against her hair. "Maybe we both found each other." The night wrapped around them like an old song. For once, there was no fear, no storm, just quiet hearts remembering how to beat in sync again. Neither of them knew that redemption always comes at a price, and fate wasn't done writing its final act. The next morning came quietly, too quietly. The world outside was wrapped in a gray mist that dulled the edges of sound. Lily woke to an empty apartment. Ethan's jacket was still draped over the chair, but his car was gone. For a moment, she thought maybe he'd gone for coffee, until she noticed the envelope on her kitchen table. Her name was written in his familiar, sharp handwriting. Her hands shook as she opened it. "Lily, don't be afraid. I'm meeting them today, to end this for good. You've spent too long running. It's my turn to stand still for you. If I don't come back, promise me you'll keep living the way you used to. Kind, even when life isn't." "Ethan," her breath caught. "No," she whispered. The letter slipped from her fingers. Without thinking, she grabbed her coat and ran into the rain, tears mixing with the cold water that drenched the city. She didn't know where he was, only that she had to find him before it was too late. Meanwhile, at the edge of the old industrial docks, Ethan stood beneath a leaking canopy, facing Victor Crane and two of his men. The air smelled of rust and sea salt. "You should have stayed out of this, Cole," Victor sneered. "You think your money makes you untouchable." Ethan's voice was steady. "No, but it makes sure people like you don't hurt anyone again." Victor smirked. "You really think one man can change how the world works?" Ethan looked past him at the rain-smeared skyline. "Maybe not the world," he said softly, "but maybe I can change it for one person." That was when Lily's voice cut through the storm. "Ethan!" He turned sharply. She was running toward them, soaked to the bone, her hair plastered to her face. "Go back," he shouted. "It's not safe." But she kept coming, tears in her eyes. "I'm not leaving you again." Victor stepped forward, his tone mocking, touching reunion. He motioned to his men. "Let's end this." Before anyone could move, sirens wailed in the distance, flashing blue cutting through the fog. Ethan's call had gone through. Police cars burst onto the docks, and Victor's men scattered. Within seconds, chaos erupted, shouting, rain, metal boots clanging against wet ground. Ethan grabbed Lily and pulled her behind a container. "I told you to stay home." "I can't lose you again," she cried. When the shouting died down, Victor was gone, taken into custody. The docks fell silent except for the steady rain and Lily's trembling breaths. Ethan turned to her, brushing wet strands of hair from her face. "It's over," he whispered. She threw her arms around him, sobbing. "Don't you ever do that again." He smiled faintly. "You sound like the girl who used to scold me for climbing rooftops." "And you still don't listen," she said through tears. He pulled her closer, his heart finally calm. Maybe I just needed someone worth listening to. Later, as dawn painted the sky in pale gold, they stood by the river, the city waking behind them. The rain had stopped. The air smelled clean, like renewal. Lily looked at him, eyes soft. "What now?" He took her hand, intertwining his fingers with hers. "Now we start over. No more debts, no more running. Just life." She smiled. "You really think people like us get happy endings?" He looked at her, the corners of his mouth lifting gently. "No, but I think we earn them." And as the first light touched their faces, two broken souls stood whole again, not because the world had been kind, but because they had learned to be. The city moved on, the rain faded, and in that quiet corner of the morning, forgiveness bloomed where pain once lived.